We are now talking to NYIT basketball head coach, Coach Evan Conti. What's going on, Coach?
What's up, guys? Pleasure to finally get on the same time of track, and pleasure to be on, man.
We're happy to have you on,
talk
man.
About basketball and everything else with you guys.
We're happy to have you on, man, and we really appreciate you joining us. How are you and your family doing with this pandemic?
My pleasure, man. And me and my family are doing all right. My dad's an essential worker, works in the produce business and grocery, and he's kind of been in the front lines of this and that kind of aspect since we started. But overall, in New York, everything's kind of been crazy right now. But at the same time, everyone's kind of just dealing with it and doing what we got to do to hopefully one day, sooner rather than later, kind of get back to normalcy the best we can. And we're all doing what we got to do. So this is the new reality, and kind of just stuck with it. So.
I want to ask you some questions about The Last Dance. I don't know if you watched it, but I think everybody and their mother watched Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls.
Absolutely watched it. I actually knew about The Last Dance well before it actually became aired that it was actually going to happen, because Scott Burrell was one of my former coaches when I played in college. So when he first told me about it and how big it was going to be, it was cool to hear kind of his stories of him being a part of that team. And obviously, as you know, Scott Burrell kind of became like that guy that everyone kind of laughed on in the show for being the guy that Jordan picked on. But it was kind of different, and it hit me differently actually seeing it live on ESPN every Sunday night. Like, it's one thing to hear the stories, but it's another thing to really see footage of it. And that was pretty crazy and unique to see.
When you watched that, did it really bother you about the Michael Jordan saga and everything that happened behind the scenes with Michael Jordan? Does it shed a light to who Michael Jordan was as a player?
Bothered me in what way? That's a pretty broad question.
Well, a lot of people were upset, and a lot of players were upset of Michael Jordan, speaking and really airing out things that maybe he shouldn't have aired out as a part of that team. The whole cocaine thing, the different things that his thoughts to Dennis Rodman, speaking about Dennis Rodman, the Horace Grant thing. I mean, did you when you watched that documentary, did it shed a light? Did it bother you that Michael Jordan came out and spread it and told the stories that maybe he shouldn't have said, some of the stories that he came out with?
It's tough to really answer that question. I wouldn't say it necessarily bothered me because, one, I wasn't a part of those teams. And I understand, like, there's things that go on throughout seasons that you want to just be kept in the locker room, even if it was, like, from 1 year ago, 20 years ago. But at the end of the day, with The Last Dance, it's like if you're going to do something like that, you need to be as authentic and as real as possible to really get the best audience and for it to be known as being the best sports documentary of all time. So in part of a way, I wasn't necessarily bothered with some of the things that he talked about and some of the things that he said, as long as it was true. And I know that there's a lot of speculation of critics and people from the media saying that this never happened or that never happened. The Horace Grant kind of calling Michael Jordan the snitch and whatever things that was talked about or whatever the case may be. But at the end of the day, at a time where we really needed content, we really needed those 2 hours every Sunday night as the sports universe to really kind of have something to talk about and really understand and see what made Michael Jordan as great as he is, then in a way I wasn't necessarily bothered by too much of it, because he even made it very clear, like, I wasn't the best role model. And if you were looking at a time for me to be a role model, I might not be that guy for you. And he made a lot of those things very clear. But in terms of speaking in a more personal way about some things that happened, I would understand why other people were bothered by it. But for me, necessarily, as a athlete before as a coach, like, I wasn't necessarily too bothered by it because I would want to see the most authentic version of it. And I think that they did a pretty good job of making it very authentic, at least from a viewer's perspective that wasn't actually a part of it in real time.
Evan, let's get into your team. This past year, the growth of your team and some of the young players that you had on your team. Tell us a little bit about the growth of your school and your basketball team.
No, definitely. So one, before even going about our team, is that New York Tech in general is a very, very good academic school. It has a very good academic reputation. It has a very good athletic reputation for numerous amount of years at the Division II level. It's had a lot of success, most recently in baseball, where it's been to a College World Series last year and that's like a huge monumental thing to happen at any school, to be able to say that, yeah, I was just a part of a College World Series. Lacrosse has won 4 national championships in the last 20 plus years. Soccer team's been a regular in the NCAA tournament for the most part in the earlier stages of the decade. And I felt like basketball, in a sense, was that one sport at New York Tech that hasn't accomplished nearly as much as a lot of other sports at New York Tech accomplished. And at the same time, it has a really, really good academic reputation. A lot of the student athletes there, very top notch, very, very first class athletes, very first class students. And the athletic administration is very new, very young, very hungry, and very motivated, which is why I think that a lot of the sports at New York Tech are trending upward and having more success, because they have a department that is great to work for, that's exciting to work for, that's so emotionally invested in what we're doing. And you don't have success in sports if you don't have an administration athletic department that is really all in for not just the coaches and for the school, but for the student athletes and people that truly genuinely care. That's the most impressive and the most special and unique thing about working at New York Tech, because it's not like that at every other school. There's only 14 scholarship sports at New York Tech, so it's a pretty small department, but it has an intimacy that you just don't get at a lot of other schools, especially at this level. So, and that's the first thing I'll say about New York Tech. But in terms of our team, we made a lot of progress toward the second half of the year. I was really excited with how we finished the year, because we were 1-12 midway through the year, and there was a group of guys that are kind of in a way used to losing at the college level. They'd never really won before, and after the winter break, we could have won in one or two directions. We could have just said, you know what, like, we're just going to have another losing year, or are we going to really bounce back and stay with it and stick to the course and really commit to playing our best basketball toward the end of the year? And I really felt like the guys bought in, and we had some upperclassmen that really stepped up and some underclassmen that had an opportunity to really improve throughout the year. And it was encouraging to me to know that toward the end of the season, we played our best basketball. And I kind of just wish that we had more games toward the end of the year, because we were a way better team night and day in the middle of February, end of February, early March, as we were in kind of November and December. So in a way, it was like, even though we lost to Malloy in the playoffs, I thought that we made some huge strides toward the end of the season. And I was really excited to get back in the gym with the guys that we have coming back, because we have most of our guys coming back from this past season, and getting in the gym with them all spring and having a really good summer, having a really good fall. And now COVID-19 just kind of took over everything, and no one really knows what's going to happen next.
In terms of being at a technological school, like you were saying, an academic school, is there any advantages and or disadvantages that you have in terms of recruiting? And also, does that influence the way your coaching style is with your players?
In a way, I think that we have a way bigger advantage as an academic school, because one, we could attract kids that have a really good IQ, that really are emotionally invested in what they're looking to go to school for. So we could draw a certain type of kid to come to New York Tech that another kid that is that smart and that intelligent might not be as interested in. Like, our architecture school at New York Tech is one of the best in the country. Computer science and just the tech savvy things that they do, that also draws people that are interested in those fields to come to New York Tech, as opposed to a lot of other schools in our conference or in the region, or even at smaller Division I schools. In terms of recruiting as well, with me and my assistants, Michael Byrne and Nico Callender, we have a very young, very, very young and hungry staff that all played college basketball, that all had a lot of success, and we can really relate to some of the younger players that we have on our team, just not in a basketball sense, but also off the court, and in a way where we could really have an intimate relationship with them and really truly care about them. And at the same time, they know, like, when it's time to get to work and when it's time to really prepare for our next opponent or what we're doing in practice that day. Like, they understand those 2-3 hours in the gym we're in that day, like, they're going to give it everything that we have, because we're not going to accept everything less. And that's why preseason, the way in the beginning of this season, was really challenging, because they had to catch up into the standards that we had for them, that they weren't necessarily pushing those standards before. And it took a long time for them to really buy in, and not just buy in, but for their bodies to understand it, and then for them to be able to handle the workload that we ask them on a day-to-day basis, while also being able to handle everything that we need to do academically. And I think that it's a blessing to be at an academic school where we have a lot of guys that are truly committed to what they're doing and what they're invested in off the court, because we don't got to worry about too many people having to be eligible because we don't recruit those kids. We're recruiting kids that we know could handle the workload and handle the work courses that are required of being a tech, because they're not going to take things lightly on you, because it's a degree that is going to go a long way once they graduate. And that's why we have a good reputation of having a 96.5% graduation rate that the school is very proud of for reasons like that. So we're able to attract certain type of student athletes that I feel like other teams in our conference can't really sell a lot of the things that we could sell. So in a way, I think it's a lot more of an advantage than a disadvantage.
We are talking to NYIT basketball head coach Evan Conti. Now, Evan, you're a basketball head coach, and there's other basketball coaches over the years that I look up to. I'm not a coach. Coach K, Coach Williams, Roy Williams. Is there a particular coach that you looked up to as a kid when growing up and saying that if I can't be a professional basketball player, I want to coach and I want to be just like this guy? Is there a particular coach that you look up to growing up?
Honestly, not really, because when I was growing up, I was just so committed to playing. I just loved basketball so much, and all I really wanted to do as a kid is just play and play and play. And in a way, I really never really got into coaching in general until the first time I ever worked at a Lehigh summer basketball camp when I was still in high school for Rising Stars back in the day. That was the first time I ever really coached at all, and I kind of fell in love with it from day one, just having that interaction with the kids on my team, even though at that time it was only for a week. And it was a passion that I really strongly had a feeling for. So in terms of, is there one coach that I really looked up to growing up? Not really growing up. There's a lot of coaches that I'll study now and a lot of tendencies that I'll study now. And I just love mid-major and low-major college basketball, and to the point where when I was in high school, instead of watching like Duke play North Carolina, I'll watch a mid-major basketball game because that's what my passion was. And I wanted to so badly be a part of that at the next level. And that's really what ended up driving me to eventually have success as a player, but also now as a coach, because I just, how much I love college basketball and the passion that I had for it. And that's kind of a way of why I am where I am today right now.
Is there any points of emphasis that you stress to your players more than anything else when you're coaching, either in games or in practice?
Just commitment and giving everything that you have. Like, it's a blessing to be able to play basketball at the next level, to be able to play basketball in college, and like, just don't take it for granted. Like, you have an opportunity to do something really, really special, and you have an opportunity to represent a really, really fine institution and kind of change the culture and change the program around. So the main thing that I stress to them is like, look, like, just give it everything you have. And it sounds pretty generic and it sounds pretty something that every coach will say at the same time, but as long as everyone's kind of bought into the culture that you're trying to provide and trying to get them to understand and get them to buy into, the rewards that come out of that are a lot more gratifying than any individual award that you could possibly have. And when we played Damon, who's relatively been a nationally ranked program at a Division II level for a couple of years now, we had a game with them, our last home game of the season, that we needed to win to make the playoffs. And looking at that game, they had four seniors and one junior who ended up being, the junior was an All-American. They had four seniors that made it to the NCAA tournament last year, was at one point a top 10 team in the country, and we ended up playing our best basketball game of the season at that game, beat them at home in the last game of the season. And that post-game celebration that we had in the locker room, beating a team that we had no business beating to be able to make the playoffs, that just made the whole season worth it. So it's really the memories and the day-to-day grind that you go through to kind of have those highs and have those moments that you kind of live with the rest of your life. Those are the things that I really preach to them, and the fact that at the end of the day, everyone's a competitor, and you don't really see the success, or you're not going to really get your team to buy into what you're trying to preach and what you're trying to do unless if you see the results.